Didn't say anything when I heard it. That's the part people always find hard to believe. They expect me to say I stormed in, or at least cleared my throat to let them know I was standing right there. But I didn't. I just stood in the hallway outside the kitchen, a bag of groceries in each hand, and I listened. My mother in law was on the phone with her sister. I caught the tail end of it. She was laughing. That loose, comfortable laugh she only used when she thought no one else was around. And she said, "Oh, don't worry about the trip. Natalie will cover it. That's what she's there for. That's what she's there for. That's what she's there for." I set the groceries down on the floor, right there in the hallway, quietly. And then I walked back outside, sat in my car in the driveway, and just stared at the steering wheel for a while. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that what I did later wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't revenge for the sake of revenge. What I did came from a place so quiet it almost scared me. I married my husband Theo 6 years ago. He's a good man. I want to be clear about that. This story isn't about him being a villain. But Theo grew up in a family where money was talked about in this vague circular way, where no one ever said I can't afford that out loud, and where asking for help was never really asking, it was just assuming. His family assumed about everything, about each other, and eventually about me. I grew up differently. My parents were teachers in Ohio. We went on exactly 2 vacations, my entire childhood. One to a lake house in Michigan that we split with another family, and one road trip to see my grandmother in Tennessee that my dad calculated the gas budget for down to the dollar. I knew what things cost. I knew what it meant to say no. When I met Theo, I had just started working at a healthcare software company in Chicago. Entry level, but with real growth potential. Within 3 years, I was making good money, not tech billionaire money, but solid, comfortable, six-figure money. Theo worked in education. He loved it. He was genuinely good at it. But the salary gap between us was significant. And we both knew it. And for a long time, we didn't let it matter. The first time his family asked us to cover something, it seemed reasonable. His parents were visiting from Phoenix and the original Airbnb they'd booked fell through last minute. Could we put them up? Of course. They stayed for 9 days. I bought groceries for 7 people for 9 days. I didn't say a word. The second time, it was a birthday dinner for his mother at a restaurant she'd picked, a place where the tasting menu alone was $140 per person. Theo leaned over before the check came and whispered, "Would you mind? I'll pay you back." He never paid me back. I never brought it up. The third time was a trip. His parents wanted to go to Sedona for their anniversary. His sister Becca was going. His brother Marcus, wait, no, I'm not using those names. His brother, let's say, his brother and his girlfriend were going. And somehow, somewhere between the idea being floated at Sunday dinner and the Monday morning when I woke up to a text from my mother-in-law with a link to a resort, it had been decided that I would be booking it. Not asked, decided. The text said, "Found this one, 4 rooms. Dates are March 14th, 18. You're so good at this stuff, Natalie. 4 rooms at a luxury resort in Sedona for 5 nights. I sat with that link open for a long time. I booked it. I don't know why I'm still embarrassed to say that. I booked it because I didn't know how to not book it yet. I was 31 years old and I still didn't know how to say no to people who had never once expected to hear it from me. The trip cost me $4,200. Nobody offered to split it. Nobody Venmo'd me afterward. When I brought it up gently to Theo, not even asking for money, just acknowledging out loud that it had been a lot, he said, "My family really appreciates you. You know that." I nodded. I let it go. That was the beginning. Over the next 2 years, I paid for things I cannot fully account for anymore. I paid for a graduation trip for Theo's niece, flights, hotel, spending money tucked into a card. I paid for his parents' car repair when his father's check engine light turned out to be something serious. Not all of it, but most of it. I paid for Christmas, not gifts, the whole thing. The dinner, the decorations, the flights for the cousins who couldn't afford to come otherwise. I paid for a weekend in Nashville for his sister's bachelorette party that I wasn't even technically in. I got invited last minute because, as Theo's mother put it, you're basically family and you're so fun to have around. I'm so fun to have around, as long as I'm picking up the check. The thank you messages used to be real. That first trip to Sedona, his mother sent me a long text about how much it meant to her, how she'd never forget it, how I was such a blessing. By the third or fourth time, the messages had become something else entirely. They were logistics. Can you look at flights for October? Or just we were thinking Thanksgiving in San Diego this year. As if I was a travel coordinator, as if my job was to make the reservation and show up and smile. I kept smiling. I also kept paying off my credit card every single month, watching my savings account grow more slowly than it should have, and quietly declining things I actually wanted for myself. I wanted to take a solo trip to Portugal. I'd been talking about it for years. I kept pushing it because there was always something else that needed covering first. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I told myself this was just what family meant. And then I stood in the hallway with 2 bags of groceries and heard my mother in law laugh and say that's what she's there for. I didn't confront her that night. I brought the groceries in, made dinner, sat at the table, and watched her talk about the upcoming trip to Lake Tahoe like I wasn't even in the room. Theo talked about the rental they'd found. His sister talked about who was sharing which room. Nobody looked at me and said, "Is this okay with you, Natalie?" Nobody asked what I thought. Nobody asked what it would cost. I smiled. I ate my dinner. I went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay there and I thought about a conversation my mom had with me years ago when I first started making real money. She said, "Natalie, the moment people stop being grateful is the moment they've decided your generosity is their right. And once they've decided that no amount of giving will ever be enough, you will just keep giving, and they will just keep taking, and they will resent you the second you stop." I thought she was being cynical then, bless her. She was just being right. I didn't say anything the next morning either, or the day after. But something had shifted in a way I can't fully explain. Like a lock turning. Not a loud click, just a quiet, almost imperceptible movement, and then it was done. I started paying attention in a different way. I noticed that at family dinners, when the check came, everyone suddenly got very interested in their phones. I noticed that when Theo talked to his parents on the phone, he'd step out of the room and I'd hear things like, "I'll talk to her," or "Don't worry, it'll work out," in a tone that told me I was the it that was going to work out. I noticed that when I was included in the family group chat, my name only came up when someone needed something confirmed, booked, or paid for. I noticed all of it and I kept smiling because I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do. Have you ever been so generous for so long that you didn't even recognize yourself in it anymore? Like you'd built a whole identity around being the person who showed up, who covered it, who made things happen, and somewhere in all of that, you forgot that you were allowed to have a different identity entirely. That was me. I had become the family's financial cushion so gradually that nobody remembered a time when I wasn't, including, honestly, me. I talked to my friend Jade about it one evening when we met for coffee. Jade is a CPA. She's also the most no-nonsense person I've ever met in my life, and she's been trying to have this exact conversation with me for approximately 3 years. When I told her about the hallway moment, the groceries, the laugh, that's what she's there for, she set her cup down and just looked at me. She didn't say, "I told you so." That's how you know someone really loves you. She said, "Okay, so what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know yet, but I'm done." She nodded slowly. "What does look like?" I thought about it. It looks like the next trip to Lake Tahoe not happening. Not for me being difficult. Not for a big dramatic confrontation. Just, it doesn't happen the way they're planning. Because the way they're planning assumes I'm the one making it happen. Jade looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "You know they're going to be upset. I know. You know they're going to make it about you being selfish. I know. Are you ready for that? I picked up my coffee. I think I've been paying for the right to be called selfish for a couple years now. So yeah, I'm ready. The Tahoe trip was planned for the second weekend of June. 4 nights, Thursday through Monday. I had been copied on the email chains, looped into the group text, and tagged in a shared Google Doc with a list of grocery items someone had compiled, and tidily, Natalie can grab these on the way. I didn't say anything, I just stopped responding. About 2 weeks out, my mother in law called me directly. She was warm, she was chatty, she asked about my work, asked about a project I'd mentioned at Christmas, and then eventually she said, "So we were thinking you could book the house rental this week. The longer you wait, the worse the availability gets." This was the moment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have a list of grievances ready. I said very calmly, "I'm actually not going to be handling the booking for this trip." A pause. "Oh, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just think it makes more sense for everyone to handle their own piece of it this time." Another pause. Longer. "What do you mean, their own piece?" "I mean, each family books their own accommodation. We can coordinate on dates, but I'm not going to be covering the whole rental." The warmth in her voice had a slightly different quality now. Still there, but thinner. "Natalie, we've always done it as a group, I know. I just can't do it the same way this time." She said she understood. She said, of course, no problem, they'd figure it out. Her voice was careful in the way voices get when someone is recalibrating on the fly. She called Theo 20 minutes later. He came to find me in my office. He stood in the doorway with this expression I recognized, the one where he was trying to figure out which version of the conversation he was about to have. He said, "My mom called." "I know. She said you told her you weren't going to help with the Tahoe booking." "That's right." "Can I ask why?" I turned my chair around to face him. I looked at him for a second. And then I said, "Theo, how much do you think I've spent on your family's vacations and trips in the last 4 years?" He was quiet. "Ballpark?" I said. He said he didn't know. I told him. I had the number. I'd done the math 2 nights before, going through credit card statements with a notepad and a glass of wine. I said the number out loud, calmly, the way you'd read a line off a spreadsheet. The color changed in his face a little. "I'm not doing it anymore," I said. "I'm not doing it because I'm angry at your family. I'm doing it because it was never supposed to be my responsibility in the first place, and somewhere along the way everyone started acting like it was, and I let it go on for too long." Theo sat down on the edge of the couch. He was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "I didn't realize how much it added up to." "I know you didn't. That's also something we need to talk about. But not right now." He nodded. "I need you to support this," I said. "Not fix it for your family, not smooth it over. Just let it be what it is." He was quiet for another long moment. And then he said, "Okay." The next 2 weeks were something. His mother called twice more. Both times she was very pleasant, very measured, very focused on logistics, as if the conversation could be steered back to the familiar groove if she just stayed practical enough. I stayed pleasant back. I didn't explain myself further. I'd already said what I needed to say. His sister sent me a long text about how the trip wouldn't be the same without me organizing everything, and how she was so bad at that stuff, and how she didn't even know where to start looking for a good rental. I read it, felt the familiar pull of just fixing it for her because it would be easier, and then typed back, "You can check VRBO or Airbnb. Lots of good options around South Lake Tahoe." That was it. No links, no booking, no picking, no picker. Here I found one. The group text got quiet. Then it got loud again. Not to me, but I saw the read receipts, saw the activity, saw that conversations were happening in some other thread I wasn't part of. I didn't chase it. I didn't ask Theo what they were saying. I just let it run. 3 days before the trip, his mother called again. This time, the warmth was mostly gone. She was polite but efficient. She said they'd figured out the accommodations, two separate houses that had cost them considerably more than a single group rental would have, and that she wanted to let me know. I said that was great. She said they were looking forward to seeing us. I said we were looking forward to it too. Theo and I drove up on Friday morning. We had a good time, actually. The lake was beautiful. The weather held. I sat on the deck with a book and a beer and watched the sun go down over the water and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like a guest. Not a coordinator, not a financial backstop, just a person who had shown up to enjoy the same weekend as everyone else. But I noticed things. I noticed that at the grocery store run, everyone pulled out their own wallets without looking at me. I noticed that when the dinner bill came at the restaurant Friday night, his mother picked it up without hesitation, quietly, almost like she was making a point. And I let her. I noticed that his sister looked a little flustered, a little unsure of her footing, like someone navigating a room where the furniture had been moved. Nobody said anything directly. We were all collectively being a family in that specific American way where the conflict is acknowledged by never being acknowledged. And then on Saturday evening, after dinner, when the others had wandered out to the fire pit, his mother sat down next to me on the porch. Just the two of us. She said, "You know, I've always thought of you as a daughter." I said, "I know. I hope I haven't made you feel taken advantage of." I looked at her. I thought about the hallway, the groceries. That's what she's there for. I thought about saying it. I thought about naming the exact moment. I decided it didn't serve anything. "I think we got into a pattern," I said, "that wasn't fair to me. I should have said something sooner. That's on me too." She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I'll do better." I nodded. I'd appreciate that. We sat together for a while after that. Not warm, not cold, just two people recalibrating. The fire pit crackled in the background. Theo laughed at something his brother said. The lake moved quietly at the edge of the yard. "I want to be honest with you about something." That conversation on the porch, it didn't fix everything. "I do better" is not a bank transfer. It's not an apology, really. It's an intention, and intentions are cheap. In the months that followed, there were moments that felt like old habits surfacing, the casual assumption in a text, the expectation in a tone of voice. Each time I named it. Not loudly, not as a confrontation. Just, "I'm not going to be able to cover that." Or, "You want to book that yourself." Clean, clear, done. Some days it felt easy. Some days it felt easy. Some days it felt like the loneliest thing in the world. But here's what I know now that I didn't know when I was standing in that hallway with grocery bags in my hands. Generosity given from fear is not generosity. It is a transaction dressed up in kindness, and the other party always knows, even if they'd never admit it, even if they never consciously think about it. They know you'll cover it. They know you won't say anything. They have learned, over time, the exact shape of what they can ask of you, and you have let them learn it. Because somewhere deep down you believed that this was how you kept their love, that if you stopped being useful, you'd stop being wanted. That belief is a lie. It is a comfortable, expensive, slowly suffocating lie. The person who loves you for what you pay is not loving you. They are managing you, and you deserve to be loved, not managed. I took that trip to Portugal in the fall. Just me. 10 days. I ate pastel de nata in Lisbon at 8 a.m. and watched the river and didn't check my phone for hours at a time. It was the best trip I've ever taken. It cost me a fraction of what that first Sedona booking cost, and every single dollar of it was mine, spent on something I actually chose. On the last night, sitting outside a restaurant in Porto with a glass of wine and the sound of the city around me, I thought about the version of myself who had stood in that hallway and said nothing, who had picked up the groceries and walked inside and made dinner and smiled. I didn't feel angry at her. I felt something more like tenderness, actually. She was trying so hard. She thought that was what love looked like, showing up and covering it and never asking for anything back. She wasn't wrong that love shows up. She was just wrong about who deserved it first. If you're watching this and you're the person who always covers it, always books it, always figures it out, always says, I'll handle it before anyone else has finished asking. I want you to hear something. Your bank account is not a love language. Your credit card is not a personality. The fact that you can pay for something does not mean you are obligated to. And the people in your life who have stopped saying thank you, who have stopped asking and started assuming, who laugh about your reliability like it's a punchline, they are not your people. Or they are not currently acting like it. You are allowed to stop. Not with a speech, not with a list of receipts, not even with an explanation if you don't want to give one. You can just stop. And then you wait and you watch and you see what people do when they have to take care of themselves. Some of them will rise to it. Some of them will surprise you. And some of them will show you exactly who they were. The whole time, the moment the money stops. Either way, you'll know. And knowing is worth more than anything you've been paying. My name is Kiki. Thank you for being here. If this story hit close to home, leave a comment. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. See you next time. I think about cause and effect a lot now. Not in a dramatic way, just the quiet, practical way that you start to see things clearly after you've spent a few years looking away from them. What happened to me didn't happen because my in-laws were evil people. It happened because I kept teaching them, one covered bill at a time, that this was how things worked. Every time I booked the trip without being asked, every time I picked up the check without hesitation, every time I let Natalie will handle it go by without a word, I was writing the rules of a game I didn't even realize I was playing. That's the part that took me the longest to sit with. Not their behavior, mine. There's a kind of intelligence that nobody teaches you when you're young and eager to be loved and useful. It's the intelligence of knowing what your generosity is actually doing. Not what you intend it to do, but what it actually does, over time, to the people receiving it. When you give without limit, without boundary, without any signal that there is a line, you don't create gratitude, you create expectation. And expectation, once it settles in, is almost impossible to uproot without a fight. Theo is a good man. Jade told me the truth when I needed it. And my mother-in-law, sitting next to me on that porch in Tahoe, saying I'll do better, I believe she meant it, in that moment. But meaning something and doing something are two entirely different muscles, and only one of them matters in the long run. What I learned from all of it, from the Google Doc titled, Natalie Can Grab These, from the $4,200 Sedona booking I made because I didn't know how to say no yet, is that integrity isn't just about being honest with other people. It's about being honest with yourself, about what you can afford, yes, but more than that, about what you're willing to keep carrying and what that carrying is costing you. Not just in dollars. In Portugal trips you kept pushing back. In the version of yourself that got quieter and smaller every time you smiled and said it was fine. The courage isn't in the confrontation. Anyone can have a blowout fight. The harder thing, the thing that actually requires something from you, is the quiet decision. The one you make alone, without an audience, when you just stop. When you close the account, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. When you choose yourself not because you've given up on the people around you, but because you finally decided that you deserve to be on the list. I took that trip to Portugal. I sat outside a restaurant in Porto on my last night there, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happy exactly, something steadier than happy. Like I had finally gotten back to myself. Like the woman who stood in that hallway holding 2 grocery bags had put them down, walked outside and decided she was worth more than what she'd been settling for. That's the only ending worth having. Not revenge. Not a dramatic exit. Just getting back to yourself. One boundary, one quiet decision, one unanswered group text at a time.